The following program is precisely the type of content that our big tech overlords do not want you to see. People who have conservative leanings, are genuinely happy, are capable of both thought and expression, and promote judging people based on what they say and do rather than who they are. Oh, the horror! YouTube, frequently referred to as Susan, does all she can to rig algorithms to ensure you never see that kind of thing, especially if they're having fun. So buckle up and punch that like button to tell Susan, you're not the boss of me. We are just moments away from starting the following program. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the following program. I'm your host, Joe Neerman, a.k.a. Good Lawgic. Hope my volume, my settings are working right. My settings are working right. If you haven't noticed, well, I'll save that for later. But the intro I use now, which was created probably 2 years ago now, made reference to Susan. And I have to retire that particular intro. I have to retire it. Susan was the derogatory reference to YouTube for a long time. Reference to former YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. Wojcicki, who ran YouTube with an iron fist in suppressing speech. She did. And one of my earliest subs, the guy who helps me with audio, I'm sure you guys all have seen him in the chat here, even though his name dances around in different names, his icon has remained the same for the last several years. And that is Joe, called to my attention this morning. Susan Wojcicki has passed. She died. Susan Wojcicki, YouTube CEO, died at 56 from a type of lung cancer that is often diagnosed late. Died at 56 from non-small cell lung cancer. So I'm going to start, even though, look, you probably know that. We'll just look at the comment from Dennis here. Is found sadness that I shared the news of Susan Wojcicki passing, my beloved wife of 26 years and mother of 5 children, left us today after 2 years of living with non-small cell lung cancer. Susan was not just my best friend and partner in life, but a brilliant mind, a loving mother, a dear friend to many. Her impact on our family and the world was immeasurable. That's probably true. I assume she was a better impact on her family than she was on the world. We are heartbroken but grateful for the time we had with her. Please keep our family in your thoughts as we navigate this difficult time. So I will wish my condolences to Dennis Troper, and certainly to his 5 kids. That's definitely difficult. It's definitely difficult when a mother of 5 is 56 is a relatively young age. And I think this is actually the best way to phrase it. She was no friend of free speech, not at all. She was as uniparty as imaginable. You could see how she's like, she was very left-leaning, and then she was like, Ben Shapiro will never be canceled because he's sufficiently vanilla and controllable. And yeah, very much anti-speech, anti-free speech. So I spent years mocking her and, rocking the Susan name. I'm going to put that to bed now because she's gone. So even though I think that her impact on the world was terrible, I'm not cheering her demise. I think that's, and I certainly wish well to her widow and 5 kids, who I'm sure are all struggling dealing with that loss. So it's hard to know how to feel exactly when someone who spent a great deal of time making life difficult for you and others actually dies. You're just sort of like, I definitely was not wishing death on her, ever. I was wishing she would change her mind. And I'll say, I think that the policy she was implementing really reflects someone who doesn't have enough respect for the world. That's the best way I can put it. Enough respect for the world. There's a certain amount of attitude. Supposedly, she was the influence that got Google to purchase YouTube, and they rewarded her by making her CEO. And you can't deny the fact that they bought it for $1.6 billion, and by the time she retired, it was worth 100 times that. It was worth $160 billion. So she definitely did well at what she did. I just don't like how she did it. But so I'm going to wish my condolences and raise a cup of coffee to her. Anyway, so I'm going to have to retire. I'm going to retire the Susan reference. I'm going to retire all of my intros, which make reference to Susan, because we need a different term at this point. But what we don't need a different term for is this. Look at this guy here. Jaded juror dropping 10. Count them. 10 good Lawgic memberships. If you were just given a membership courtesy of Jaded Juror, that would include you, Marjorie Smith. That would include you, Amiana List. That would include you, Digger 007, and Pow Angel, and Muffin Rando, and Warren Moffat. If you were in that, if you were in that exclusive list, hey, include Joe, who I made reference to, the Unburdened numbers, who's currently rocking the name the Unburdened number 6, and Carpe Diem Kool-Aid 2008, as well as Nunya Business. And we can't start the show until Nunya gets here. So if you were gifted, I urge you to please issue your gratitude to Jaded Juror for the very generous gift bestowed upon you. Welcome you into the following. Following is not at all a cult. That's a cult. This you're well aware by now. I'm sure you're well aware of that. Most of you have heard that before. It's not. I'm trying to prove how anti-culty it is on a daily basis. I think I need to take more steps on that. Hey, Joe, your QR code is missing in the top corner. It is. I changed it yesterday. I appreciate you calling that to my attention, CL. I don't know if I've ever made a dime from this QR code. Thank you for calling that to my attention. Yesterday, when I was covering a story, the QR code was blocking part of the story, so I sort of slimmed down to the little thin banner to try and make it easier to read what was in the your upper right corner, my upper left. But so that's what I did. I appreciate you calling that to my attention. All right, I want to jump right on in with this comment. You may have noticed in the last 3 weeks, I haven't shaved. It was a period called 3 weeks, which culminated with Tisha B'Av, the day of mourning. So I haven't shaved. And then I recently started watching Duck Dynasty, which I got to tell you, I feel like I can rock it. I feel like I can rock it. I can rock the full Louisiana, the full Cajun thing. I feel like I could do it. I feel like it would actually enhance a lot, not just about the show, but about me as a person. That's what I sort of feel it would be. So I'm just letting it grow. I trimmed out like here, but it's much thicker than I'm liking this. I'm liking the fuller beard. Definitely liking the fuller beard. I don't know how much longer I'm going to like. I don't know if I'm going to go Willie Robertson long. I don't know if I'm going to go Jace Robinson long or Phil Robertson long, but definitely keeping the fuller beard. Definitely keeping it. Before I had like a more thin tapered type of thing. I'm definitely keeping the full. I'm really liking this. Anyway, so yeah, get used to it. If you're not, if you don't like it, get used to it, because that's what I plan on telling. I haven't told Lady Lawgic this yet. She initially never wants me to grow facial hair. She likes me much better. For the first like 15 years of marriage, she was like, no. And then I just started slowly growing some and letting it spread across my face. I've still been able to finally respond to my voting question. I can do it, but I'd like a more knowledgeable opinion. Oh, you're coming back to me with the voting question. Your primaries are coming up in another few days, I think, right? I think it's next week. I'll see what I can do. I'll see if I can find out anything for you. Do me a favor and DM me on X the exact names that you wanted to know, because this way I'll have it there. Okay, it'll just be easier for me, Lily. All right, let's get into I want to break with one quick story before I get into the main stories. I want to break with one quick story, and I also want to let you know that I am going to be hosting a locals after I finish the stream. I'm expecting the stream to wrap up around 12:45 or so. I'm expecting this to be a little bit of a longer stream because I plan on having a dialogue, probably having a call in to have a discussion about certain topic. Well, about the early voting thing, but because I think that there's a lot of arguments that they're strong. I think people feel strongly about the early voting thing. So I'm probably going to save that for the last topic and sort of let that roll out with phone calls until like the end of the show at 12:45, and then I'm going to be rolling over to locals. There is a link to locals in the description, both in Rumble and in YouTube. It's also in the chat. In fact, I didn't put it. I neglected to put it in the chat for YouTube. It's also in the chat. Rumble. I'm going to remember that now. Put that up here. I'm going to pin that in the chat in Rumble. That is going to be an after show. In the after show, I plan on covering. Why is it not pinning? In the after show, I plan on covering two Supreme Court decisions. Not Supreme Court, excuse me. State Supreme Court decisions. Not Supreme Court of the United States, but two different states issued decisions today at their highest levels regarding pro-life, pro-choice, and they went in opposite directions, kind of from where you would expect them to go. So I want to break that down for you, and I also want to share with you a killer meme. That's not really a meme, it's more a video clip, which was just like really funny and definitely something I cannot show on YouTube. So that's going to be on locals. That's my locals after show. Link is in the description, link is in the chat. You just click it over there, and you can just pop on over, and that'll be starting 12:45 in the morning Eastern time over here. So, but before I get into the other stories I wanted to cover, I wanted to share with you this that I know Robert Gouveia was talking about yesterday. I know he was talking about this yesterday, but I wanted to share it with you as well, because this story is starting to garner some muster. The story relates to fraudulent activity that the Harris campaign has been engaging in with respect to their press coverage. I'll start with the video here because that's always the best way to start an explanation of anything.
Axios reporting the campaign is giving real news articles a pro-Kamala Harris spin and then using them in Google ads. Martha McCallum's been looking at this, and she joins us now. Good morning to you. Welcome back.
Good morning,
nice
Bill.
to see you.
Great to see you.
Get ready for Chicago, all right?
Here we go.
Save that for a moment here. So the trick was we'll make it like an ad, and we'll reframe the headline so that when you're searching, maybe you see the spot and you read the headline, but maybe you don't understand that it's actually sponsored by the campaign. Show it, guys. Here we go. So this involved what? They cited CNN, NPR, Reuters, Associated Press, The Guardian a lot. And you would see this as you were going through your internet search. And
so you would see in the internet search, you see there, if you're on, let's say you're on X, so you would see VP Harris economic vision, lower costs and higher wages. Or you see this from like NPR. They'll say an NPR article say Harris will lower health costs. And it's supposed to say sponsored in the upper corner. What they would do is when you click on these links, it would bring you to a story, but that would not be the headline of the story. The Harris campaign wrote these headlines. The headline here, the parts in blue, VP Harris economic vision dash lower costs, higher wages. Also, Harris will lower health costs. This is sounding like NPR wrote an article saying they believe that Harris will lower health costs. Now, that's shady enough when it says sponsored up here. So you sort of know, okay, this is an advertisement because it says sponsored. But apparently, there was some sort of glitch where a lot of times the word sponsored was missing. So if you're going through your feed, it's looking like, oh, NPR thinks Kamala is great, and Axios thinks that Kamala is great, and AP thinks Kamala is great. Now, all these news organizations probably would support Kamala Harris, but they haven't reached the feted level of lacking in journalistic integrity that they actually would write a headline with that. Not yet. They're close, but they would not actually have not actually come to a point where they would actually write a headline that is so blatantly partisan as what was crafted by the Harris campaign. So what they did is they crafted these headlines, which were similar to the stories that were being that they would link you to, but not exactly. And the agenda behind it was to make it look as if Kamala Harris, whatever idea was being expressed, was the actual belief of the journalistic entity that was being rehashed, even though it enhanced and greatly strengthened the commentary portion of those particular articles. And that was designed to deceive the public. And somehow, magically, the word sponsored disappeared a lot. Let's hear the rest of the report.
Well, that's cheap.
Wow, it is. This is really, and I should also point out that Google says that there was a glitch in their system that meant that some of the...
Another Google glitch. Google glitches that it takes out that it's an advertisement. Google glitches that that you can't find anything about the Trump assassination. They just have all these different glitches, which always seem to be really negative for the Trump campaign and beneficial to the Harris campaign. It's just another one of those magic glitches. Oh, no. Do we have a glitch here? Oh, no. That was a terrible mistake. We have to get on that really. I'm going to get on that first thing in the morning and just remedy that.
The sort of barriers that they try to put in to make it clear what this is weren't working. Oops. I wonder if it was true for other campaigns as well.
Nope.
We don't know that yet, but they say they're looking into that.
At least there's no indication yet. They say that Trump never engaged in changing headlines that way. So it really wouldn't be relevant to Trump.
But just as an example, so this is a Guardian headline. VP Harris fights abortion bans. Harris defends reproductive freedom. Well, those things are true. That's a factual statement. That's something that she backs and supports. But then they have a description under the headline. So you know how there's a headline when you read a news story. Then there's an under headline that you read in the news story. But it says this: VP Harris is a champion for reproductive freedom and will stop Trump's abortion bans. So the second line in what looks like a news story is actually a campaign slogan, a campaign statement. And, we all look at so much information, take in so many things so quickly throughout the day, right? This is very subtle, very manipulative. And in a moment when you also have a stepped up threat from Iran trying to get their bots into all of this and influence people in ways that are very subtle and difficult to figure out. This is something that I think requires a lot of diligence on the part of people who are looking for this information.
And Google says it's just what? They got one by the goalie? here?
Yeah, Google says, well, there was a glitch. There's supposed to be more disclosure that this is an ad, a campaign ad, and they're gonna work on it.
Well, there you go. That's where you're at. In case you want to advertise with fonts, that's where your ad would go. Chuck Calesto says that there may be repercussions for the Harris campaign. Harris campaign and Google could now face lawsuit after fake news headline scheme. WDAY Radio, a local news station in Fargo, North Dakota, is contemplating legal action after the Kamala Harris campaign allegedly manipulated WDAY headlines to falsely suggest support for her in an ad campaign, according to the station's president in a statement to the Daily Caller. A recent Axios report revealed that the Harris campaign has been altering news headlines and descriptions in Google search ads to give the impression that prominent news outlets are endorsing her. Should they file, this may open the door for multiple other organizations to follow suit. It'll be interesting to see whether Elon finances this. This is the sort of thing that you think Elon has talked about financing before. But here's a little picture they have of different. Let's just jump. Well, anyway, where they just sort of you can sort of see if I make this a little bigger, maybe that'll help. That's definitely not helping. I don't know if you can really see it, but it says, Tim Walz's military service, 24 years, the National Guard. Who is Kamala Harris? Harris will lower health costs. Harris picks Team Walz. 215,000 Minnesota families win. 215,000 Minnesota families win. That's unlikely. That's very, very unlikely. That's very unlikely. Anyway, so I will certainly try to keep you up to date with respect to any lawsuits that do commence as a result of this this deceitful advertising strategy that has been practiced by the Harris campaign. All right. Next up, I had a couple of small things I wanted to get out of the way first. Let's talk about this. Yeah, I'm going to cover this first. This is a report from Benny Johnson. As we work our way over towards the Secret Service's ridiculously pathetic policies, which are really just utter incompetence, like inexplicable incompetence as to how they operate and function. But Benny Johnson had Mike Benz on, who's a guy who I've had the pleasure of spending some time talking with on X Space. This guy is wicked smart. He's wicked smart. So I wanted to get his breakdown from that report.
The reports are now that the gunman Thomas Crooks hung out at the Clarion Sportsman Club, which is frequented by the Department of Homeland Security for training, and that he was training on a very specific rifle for very specific distances. And the Homeland Security, of course, is the agency that houses the Secret Service. And
so he's hanging out with them folks. Really?
They are scratching their head saying, hold on, this guy was brushing shoulders with federal agents. It seems like really curious. Maybe they knew this guy. Your thoughts, Mike?
Well, specifically, I don't know enough about the minutia of gun ranges to know if, every gun range in the area, has some sort of local police or FBI or DHS sort of connection to it, if that's something that's a relatively, frequent thing.
Sure.
And
I like the fact that this is what I like about what Mike Benz is doing here. He's like, let's not all just go jumping to conclusions here. That because they're in the same gun range, that necessarily implies something nefarious. For all we know, you pick any gun range in his hometown area, there's going to be some sort of police presence, which is regularly frequenting it. So we shouldn't be surprised. And let's not all go jumping to conclusions here that just because he's attending the same gun range, that means that he has some sort of connection to people who are frequenting that range.
I would need to know more about that. And I'm actually quite interested, because one of the things that's so concerning about the DHS specificity there is, I have been saying since day one, practically, if certainly week one, that it would be remarkably easy to pull this off all in-house within DHS through the following mechanism. We know that January 6th was
by this.
This is pretty. All right, let's
You mean an assassination on President Trump?
Yes.
Okay.
Allowing a clear shot on the United States president, at a rally. We know that DHS, and specifically a division called HSI, Homeland Security Investigations, had more feds on January 6th than the FBI did. They were running something through the JTTF, the Joint Terrorism Task Force, to recruit informants in the Oath Keepers, the Proud Boys, and the 3%ers. And there's a great tape that I've referenced many times now, a 45-minute audio that was recorded lawfully, but discreetly by a former Oath Keeper named Jeremy Brown, who was recruited by two DHS HSI, Homeland Security Investigations officers, starting about 2 months before January 6th, but then ramping up into a month before, and even called him on his personal cell phone twice the morning of January 6th. This is all, by the way, in federal documents. You can they can read all about it, and you can listen to this, and I can post on my timeline. But and it was HSI actively recruiting intelligence assets within the same militias that they were targeting and and surveying, in order to turn against the Trump movement and to infiltrate and to participate in January 6th events. Now, HSI.
Again, this is Mike Benz who's talking now. He's an investigative reporter. So, and he's based as hell. Like I said, he's wicked smart. So, and he's been spending a lot of time looking into both J6 and the assassination.
Is an interesting sort of outfit unto itself. DHS is a little bit different than the FBI, because the FBI is supposed to be the intelligence arm of the Justice Department. So everything has to run through justice. Everything has to be, approved by them. There has to be a law-breaking predicate. You have to, get all the paperwork because it has to be criminal. But DHS is not. DHS is sort of a free-roaming agency in that way. It's not. DHS is the only other intelligence agency other than the FBI, but it's not attached to the Justice Department. It can do its own thing. And it's been reported that because of the NATO summit going on that week and the Jill Biden event going on that day during the Butler rally, that there was a reduced Secret Service presence covering Donald Trump, and that they were replaced by agents from HSI.
Yeah.
So just to be clear here, Secret Service gets spread thin. They need to have a certain number of bodies at the Trump rally. So they decide, okay, look, we don't have enough Secret Service agents. Let's recruit people from HSI to help supplement and bring them in here so we have enough bodies to cover the rally.
Yes.
Now, if HSI also had representation at this gun range, that is, all it would have taken. Now, one of the things I come back to is look at the timing. Okay, not only was this shooting, this attempted assassination, the day before the RNC convention to nominate someone, so it would have been super easy doing it that way to put in a Nikki Haley, and it was 2 weeks after the SCOTUS immunity decision ended, the Justice Department's ability to kill Trump through 1,000 years in prison. But this seemed really ready to go, didn't it? The Butler rally took place 1 week, just 1 week after it was announced. And in just 1 week, this guy, 20-year-old kid, got drone surveillance, was able to, scope the place, was able to construct 3 homemade pipe bombs. God, where have I heard that before? And if you remember, the FBI was busted teaching right-wing militia people to make pipe bombs in the Gretchen Whitmer Fednapping case. The thing they were actually arrested on was attempting to purchase weapons of mass destruction, i.e. pipe bombs, that were sold to them by FBI agents. And not only that, before the FBI attempted to sell them pipe bomb materials, the FBI created a Truman Show of federal agents to come to these people's meetings and teach them how to make pipe bombs. Okay, you can't look up how to make a pipe bomb in your local library. And if you try to Google it,
don't. Seriously, don't. If you're thinking about Googling how to make a pipe, don't do it. Don't. Because Big Brother is always watching you. Always watching you. Don't. There's no reason to be making a pipe bomb, but even just like looking it up, it's just like, seriously, that just don't. You'd be better off with like doing all sorts of terrible searches. There are far other terrible searches which would be less incriminating than how to make a pipe bomb.
Don't do this, because you'll meet a lot of new friends who will be really, really into
destroying your life,
edgy stuff.
Yeah.
If you do this, but if you run a Google search for how to make a pipe bomb, your life will be federally infiltrated so fast, because those are ring-fenced terms by the FBI. So the only way you can really learn to make homemade explosive devices is from someone else who knows how to make them, either from the military or a Fed. And the fact that this person within a week was able to scramble together not one, not two, three homemade explosive devices, in addition to the drone technology, in addition to serendipitously having all the dominoes fall on security. We know from Josh Hawley's whistleblower.
I use she, her pronouns. I'm not certain.
Oh, sorry about that. I got
like it's like a knife in the heart.
I don't know why that popped up.
I did specifically ask ahead of time.
Hold on one second.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go.
I got that. How did that just start going?
Okay, the Sweetwater starts at okay. Not.
I'm so sorry. I apologize.
It's just always like a knife. It always hurts.
Sorry about that. That started playing. I played that yesterday. I apologize.
Do this, because you'll meet a lot of new friends who will be really, really into
destroying your life,
edgy stuff.
Yeah.
If you do this, but if you run a Google search for how to make a pipe bomb, your life will be federally infiltrated so fast, because those are ring-fenced terms by the FBI. So the only way you can really learn to make homemade explosive devices is from someone else who knows how to make them, either from the military or a Fed. And the fact that this person within a week was able to scramble together not one, not two, three homemade explosive devices.
That is very, very strange. Like, where does he learn how to do that? Where exactly did he learn how to do that? And if he did find it somewhere on Google, how was he not someone who was quickly on the FBI's radar? Like, let's try to live in a world where we trust our triple letter agencies and say they're the good guys and they're genuinely trying to do their job and stop someone from engaging in terrorist activity. Which I think is probably true of the majority of them. I think it's probably true. So how is it that he would be able to learn how to make a pipe bomb and that they would not know about him? Is there someone in his life who could have helped teach him how to make a pipe bomb? I wouldn't even know where to begin with making a pipe bomb. I assume it's got a pipe and a little egg timer. That's what I assume it has. Beyond that, though, I have a feeling that's not going to cause much harm to anyone.
In addition to the drone technology, in addition to serendipitously having all of the dominoes fall on security. We know from Josh Hawley's whistleblower, at least it's alleged, that there was supposed to be an agent on the roof, but they were told not to be there, or for some reason they wandered off because of the heat. What is that agent's name? Was that agent at the same gun range that Butler was? That Thomas Crooks was at? That would be interesting. How about the FBI's counter snipers who were supposed to be stationed overlooking the roof, but magically at the same time wandered off? I mean, both of these things need to happen simultaneously for this thing to happen.
And he has to know it's going to happen, that he'll be able to get into position.
But all it would, I mean, think of how easy this would be to pull off. HSI comes in and replaces Secret Service. HSI, we know they said DHS uses that gun range. Well, was it HSI agents specifically? Well, which 4 or 5 agents were they? That may lead you to an answer here, or at least something much closer to it, because all that could have been done in-house. If a small group at HSI had advanced awareness that there was an impressionable loner who was willing to shoot the president, and then serendipitously a rally is announced within driving distance, that kid can be activated, just like the FBI did in 2015 with the Garland, Texas shooting that led us to war in Syria, where they said, tear up Texas. Could have just said, tear up Butler. And here's another thing. We're told that they can't get his communications because they were foreign encrypted accounts. Well, all it would have taken is for those same agents to say, hey, buddy, we're going to talk on Signal. We're going to talk we're going to use a foreign encrypted account. And then boom. Now the whole thing is in-house. You evade the whole Justice Department oversight. The whole thing can have their cell phone communications deleted, just like the Secret Service did on January 6th with the pipe bomber, as soon as it was discovered that they were responsible for that and failing to catch that. And I'm putting that very charitably. But it could all be done in-house because the HSI was in charge of defense, and HSI is in charge of recruiting informants. Gee, that's really, really convenient.
That's amazing. It does paint quite a picture there. Quite a picture. Look, it's too early to say anything definitively. That's for certain. I'm certainly not going to go out there and say something definitive about, triple letter agency involvement. But these are questions that beg for answers, and not answers that take 6 months to get to. These are answers that we should have within the next couple of weeks. But we'll see. But the FBI seems to be having other problems of their own. Serious problems. Apparently, Director Rowe had a 1 p.m. address. So, Secret Service Director, replacement for Kimberly Cheadle, Ronald Rowe, had an important address this afternoon to every Secret Service employee. Susan Crabtree reported on this. What she said is the most important news from the Secret Service Director's 1 p.m. address this afternoon to every Secret Service employee. The Secret Service Butler rally that ended in an assassination attempt against Trump and the murder of rally-goer Corey Comparatore apparently did not have a unified command center with local law enforcement. This is what I was talking about in my headline here as far as incompetent policy. Here it is. That you are coordinating with local police in order to make sure an area is secure, and you basically have 2 teams that cannot communicate with each other. Cannot communicate with each other. Not because there was a breakdown that day, not because there was some sort of glitch in the system that someone forgot to check off certain protocols. No, that's policy. That was policy under Kimberly Cheadle. Unbelievable. How the hell are you supposed to be monitoring an area where you have no idea if there's some sort of emergency alert in one portion of the area, and basically half the team at least is like, we didn't even know anything about it. We have no way of communicating with them. We have no way of letting them know this is happening. Imagine 6 people come in there with like guns and we're basically firing things off, and half the team has no clue. How stupid is this? How stupid is this? I mean, it happened to be a lone gunman here, as far as we know. Happened to be a lone gunman in Butler shooting at Donald Trump, as far as we know, which I believe to be the case, that it was a lone gunman. I'm not saying that facetiously when I say as far as we know, saying so far, it seems that was one person. But the point is, how the hell can you not be able to communicate, the entire team not be able to communicate with each other? How can you function as one unit when you are necessarily 2 separate units which have zero chance of, what are they supposed to start using flags? They're supposed to start waving flags? They're going to have the two white flags like they're on a yacht or something like that and just be like, start just like sign languaging people like with their arms. How are they supposed to communicate with each other? Like how are they supposed to let them know about a problem? What is the point? How stupid is this? Therefore, there was no interoperability between U.S. Secret Service and local law enforcement when communications came in. I've been asking this question to the Secret Service for weeks now. Finally, we have our answer. They literally could not talk to each other that day. It was completely siloed, meaning you got this camp here, boop, 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 all talking to each other over here, this camp here, boop, 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 and no one knows what's happening in the other silo. Not just partially silo, with the command post serving as a way to make it interoperable and share communications. Senator Ron Johnson and his team of staffers were the first to bring up the siloing of communications in his initial report released publicly on July 21st. It appears as if unified command centers at rallies and events, made up of Secret Service supervisors and local law enforcement counterparts before Butler, were limited to national special security events only, NSSEs, national special security events only. So in other words, this is their policy. Our policy is incompetence. Our policy is stupidity. Our policy is that we're just going to have the left flank have no clue what the right flank is doing. Just be completely, utterly incapable of actually having a cohesive team work together to make sure the area is secure. That makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense right there. Those events are major. What are NSSEs? The National Special Security Events. Those events are major federal government public events considered to be nationally significant and designated by the president and or the Department of Homeland Security secretary. In this case, Mayorkas. Oh, it's a big surprise. Mayorkas didn't care about having interoperability. How has everything come back to this jackass? This stupid jackass, Alejandro Mayorkas. How does everything come back to this person who was impeached already and the Senate refuses to take it up? Thank you, Senate. Thank you, stupid leftist Senate. Refuse to take it up despite the utter incompetence of this guy. Everything comes back to Alejandro. Everything comes back to Alejandro Mayorkas. They therefore did not include rallies and campaign events of Trump. So obviously, the USSS and DHS, including Biden and Mayorkas, were using outmoded protocols for Trump events, attracting tens of thousands of people. It's like they're treating it as if it's like some sort of Biden campaign event, where it's like, well, they're probably going to have like 40 people show up there. So why do you need to have like interoperability? It's not a big deal. That's what I guess maybe they were looking at his own rallies and they said, oh, okay, we know that not going to be too many folks showing up here. This is beyond outrageous. Rowe, in his 1 p.m. address, quote, "We're going to put somebody in that command post, or we're going to establish our security room in partnership with the unified command post. It's the same model we use in NSSEs. So why would we use it? Why would we use it on our daily operations? Because why would we not use it in our daily operations?" On interoperability communications with local law enforcement, Rowe said this: "It's more than just trying to find the frequency of the local PD that we're working with and driving it into our radio network," he said, noting that it will require investments. He said he's already stood up a task force that will be co-chaired by a Secret Service supervisor in the Protective Division in partnership with Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. Quote, "We're going to bring together FEMA. We're going to bring together other operational elements of the department. We're going to bring in state and locals. We're going to get in a small room, and set them up to monitor communications with our counterpart." Oh, well, there you go. There you go. Just astonishing. Fuller wrote, quote, on the need for local law enforcement, Secret Service, unified command posts at the campaign events, not just at NSSEs. According to Secret Service Director O from his 1 p.m. all hands remarks, quote, "We're going to bring in state and locals. We're going to get a room, figure this out, because gone are the days of putting an agent in some faraway room in some small broom hall closet with a box radio. We're going to set them up with modern communications with a counterpart. I was told that the Butler Secret Service command post likely consisted of a box radio and 2 or 3 guys, maybe even in parked car. That's how loose these can be." Quote, "We saw in Butler that failed us. So I've given directions to all the SAICs in the field. We're looking at security rooms and command posts. If state and local partners established a unified command post, we're going to put someone in that command post. We're going to establish a security room in partnership with that local unified command post. It's the same model we use for NSSEs. Why wouldn't we use it in daily operations? So the Secret Service says there was a representative from Pennsylvania State Police in the command center at the Butler rally on July 13th, but it appears there was no one from Butler ESU. The Pennsylvania State Police was present at the USS Incident Command Center on July 13th. We refer to Colonel Paris' testimony before the House Homeland Security Committee on July 23rd. 202.36. 202.26 to let's see what she's referring to here.
That I could name would be Butler County Sheriffs were in our operations plan. Pittsburgh City Police provided assets to the motorcade, and I believe Allegheny County Police also.
You said that you were in the incident command center, that your agency was in the incident command center with the Secret Service.
Yes, sir.
Well, all the other agencies in that command center?
I believe that some of those agencies were represented, but I can't definitively tell you.
We need to find the answer to that. It was Butler ESU in that command center?
I was told at one point that there was a representative in there. How long and over what period, I'm not sure. I'm aware of 3.
So the agency that's in charge of the outside perimeter, actually the agency in charge of the greatest threat, because when you stand at the podium, and I stood there, and when you look, all you had to do is look around. There's the greatest threat right there. It's 100 yards away. It's elevated, direct line of fire to the president. I stood on that roof. No problem standing on that roof. And yes, I am 70 years old. Okay. So the timeline is very important here. If in fact they thought that Mr. Brooks was so suspicious that they actually pulled the ESU counter snipers away, because there were counter snipers, what I understand, and stand in that window, a way to look for him. And from what I understand the timeline, it's about 20 minutes before the president came out. Was that information relayed to the Secret Service, that they were looking for a suspicious individual and that people had been pulled away to look for that suspicious individual? Was that relayed to the Secret Service?
I believe that it was.
And was that relayed to the Secret Service, the team that surrounds the president himself?
I can't answer that.
Well, if it wasn't, that's another big mess up.
Oh my God. It's so incompetent. So incompetent. Let's watch the rest of Mr. Jimenez's interview here.
And I can tell you, this is just one of a bunch of mess ups that I've seen. One of them question that I have is, why in the world was that team from ESU in the building to begin with? Why weren't they on a rooftop? And it was a hot day, right? And so that's another question that I'm going to say. Why were you assigned inside a building when you have a little window, it's like this big, right? And your line of sight out of that window, unless you stick your head out of the window, is pretty limited, your view. So why were you inside, not outside? Who said for them to be inside and not outside? What did the Secret Service tell you were inside the perimeter, right?
Yes.
For the most part. You were inside the perimeter.
Me personally, or
No, I'm saying your agency was inside the perimeter. But actually the biggest threat was outside the perimeter. And so who developed the
Which we still don't
plan
know how they developed that
protect
perimeter.
the outside of the perimeter? There's only one agency. That's the United States Secret Service. Because you really can't ask the local agency to do that because they're not in the business of dignitary protection. They don't do it all the time. You don't do it all the time. They do it all the time. So, Mr. Chairman, we're going to need those other agencies to come in. We need a timeline. Who said what to who, and what the action that was taken. You know, one thing that I noticed in another video, and I've got to find out if it's true, and it appears to be true, is that the snipers on the south side reposition to look to the north side. And I want to know what the timeline for that was. How far in advance were the snipers, the counter snipers on the south side told, hey, you need to look at a threat on the north side? And how much time was there between that and then the shots being fired? Do you have any information on that?
I do not have a specific timeline.
Okay, and those are that's the information that
Why would
we
they have
need.
timelines?
It's not unusual to have people on different frequencies. Actually, you have to because you have so many people, but you have to have everybody in the same place so they communicate with each other. So we need to know if everybody that was in charge or had responsibility for protecting not only the interior perimeter, but outside the perimeter, if they were all in that incident command center. And if they weren't, that's a huge problem too. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields. I now recommend.
All right. Good job by Mr. Jimenez there. I agree with you, Phil. These people need to be expunged from all political power. Too bad it's probably going to take losing a war and badly for that to happen. In a sane society, most would be in prison. We're not in a sane society, Philip. We are not in a sane society, sadly. That's just the reality of the world we're in. All right. What did I want to cover next? This. Let's see. Oh. Let's pull this up. Judge. All right, moving along to my neck of the woods. I'm referring specifically to the New York State courts system, and I'm referring specifically to the infamous gag order that Judge Mersham put on Donald Trump. Well, today he issued a new ruling, and it was a decision on defendant's motion for recusal. And in it, he brings up, well, we'll see how he issues this decision and discuss its impact and how it relates to my ongoing litigation against Judge Mersham. On May 31st, 2023, defendant filed a notice of motion seeking this court's recusal. In case you're unfamiliar with the word recusal, it means remove yourself from this case. So, they brought a motion for recusal. In the motion, the defendant argued, among other things, that the political and financial interest of a family member of the court, meaning Lauren Mersham, his daughter, creates an actual or perceived conflict of interest because rulings and decisions made by this court may result in a financial benefit to the court's family member. Defendant's May 31, 23 memorandum at page 1. Before defendant filed his motion, this court had already written to the Advisory Committee on Judicial Ethics to seek a formal opinion regarding the issues later raised in defendant's motion on May 31st, 2023. In response to the court's inquiry, the Advisory Committee on May 4, 2023, that a judge's relatives remain free to engage in their own bona fide independent political activities. Yeah, that doesn't mean that you should keep handling the case. Of course, they're able to do whatever the hell they want. That's not the question. The question is not whether it's legal for Lauren Merchan to engage whatever activities she so desires. She shouldn't be limited because her father or daddy is a judge in New York. The question is, should he continue overseeing this case? So he tries cleaning that up by saying, and that, quote, the matter currently before the judge does not involve either the judge's relative or the relative's business, whether directly or indirectly. Not indirectly? Really? 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 She's writing out articles about 34 guilty verdicts, and you're telling me not indirectly? By decision dated August 11, 2023, this court denied defendant's motion. A copy of the advisory committee's opinion was provided with the court's decision. On April 3rd, 2024, so that was all the way back in 2023. That was a year ago in 2023. That's what the opinion was. I don't know if they realized how much money she had been making, because now the fact of the matter is it's come out that her company has made $12 million this year from Democratic operatives. On April 3rd, 2024, the defendant filed a second motion seeking this court's recusal. Raising no new facts or law, the defendant again premised his motion for recusal on the unsubstantiated claims that a family member of this court stood to gain financially from this court's rulings. Defendant's 4-3-24 memorandum on pages 19-20, the second motion for recusal was denied from the bench on April 15th. On May 30th, a New York County jury returned a unanimous verdict finding defendant guilty on all 34 counts in the indictment. This court set a deadline of June 13, 2024 for the filing of post-verdict motions. Defendant did not file any motions by that deadline. On July 31, defendant filed the instant motion for recusal, his third such motion. Defendant did not seek leave to file the motion, meaning since I gave you only until June 13th to file a motion, and I gave you until this deadline over here to file a motion, now you need my permission if you want to file it after June 13th. Now, to be fair, because I want you to have a fair perspective as to how things tend to work in the law. His issue that he's implying right here, that you need leave of the courts, this is something that a lot of judges will get very sticky about. They will get in, and whether that is not a display of Merchan having any issue with Trump. You have to assess reasonably the way things tend to work. And I recognize that most of you probably have had little interaction with the New York court. So I will tell you that my experience with New York judges is that if you want to breach various time parameters that they set for you, you need their permission. If you want to have your motion heard and your motion was supposed to be filed by date X and you want to file it after date X, you need their permission. That is not an uncommon thing for a New York judge to say, even, no matter who's filing the motion. So that's why he's saying defendant did not seek leave to file a motion 48 days after the deadline set by this court for the filing of post-verdict motions, nor did he seek an extension of time. Defendant justifies latest motion for recusal on changed circumstances. Now, that would be a basis to get an exception to the time. Technically, you are supposed to ask for that extension of time. Procedurally, he's not wrong for saying that that's something that procedurally should be done. Courts tend to be generous in granting that leave if, in fact, there is some sort of new development of facts that could not have been known at the deadline. So you say, look, I'm coming to you with this now because this was something nobody knew about on June 13th when we hit our deadline. Otherwise, I would have filed this on June 13th. You are technically supposed to ask for permission to file late. And they didn't. So he has a right to make a stench about that. It seems as if he's pretending that it's not a deadline issue. because he ends up addressing the motion anyway. Defendant appears to present two arguments in his instant motion. Although not entirely clear, defendant first argues that the court's order restricting extrajudicial statements is unjust and unconstitutional. What is this order regarding extrajudicial statements? Well, this is something I wrote a great deal about in my application, because this is a reference to his gag order. And that his gag order on March 26th was called the order restricting extrajudicial statements. He had a follow-up order, which was a complementary order restricting extrajudicial statements. I think it was complementary. It's definitely something with a C. I know this because I called his earlier order ORES, order restricting extra, and I gave it that acronym. And the later order I called CORES because it had it was I think it was complementary order. Defendant anyway, defendant argues that this is the gag order, is unjust and unconstitutional. This argument does not merit extensive discussion, since it does not credibly purport to support the motion for recusal. And I think that's a fair point. Just because whether or not the gag is constitutional is not really relevant to a duty on the judge to step aside. So I can understand Judge Merchan saying, okay, you're not happy with the gag order. I can deal with that if in fact there's a necessary motion that I need to address. But that's not really relevant to whether or not I have a duty to recuse. Defendant has litigated the court order restricting extrajudicial statements numerous times, not only with this court, but with New York's appellate courts as well. This is true. Are you going to bring up my case? You going to bring up Good Lawgic versus Merchan? No. It brings up Trump versus Merchan. And people versus Trump. Decision dated June 25th, Trump versus Merchan. I don't know. I'm feeling a little slighted here. Because I also been litigating. Where's reference to me? You know who I am. Don't tell me you don't know. You know who I am. You don't even mention it. All right. Look, I guess it's not my motion he's trying to fight. He's just trying to say that why Trump's not entitled to it. Okay. Notably, this court did modify the order after trial over the people's objection. Oh, it was a real big give that he was able to talk about the witnesses after trial. However, aside from this court's own modification, the order has remained undisturbed by New York appellate courts. It is therefore difficult to rationalize how defense counsel can, in good faith, order the claim that the order is unconstitutional. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is an important thing for you to take note of. He would have a far stronger case. I'm going to finish the order in just a moment. He would have a far stronger case to claim that the order was unconstitutional if, in fact, he actually had really made that claim in his papers. And I mean, I don't understand. I do understand, but I don't. I'm going to pause, and we're going to come to. Actually, you know what? Let me finish this order, and then I'll come back to the constitutionality of this stuff. Let's do it that way. Defendant's second argument is that the alleged relationship between Vice President Kamala Harris, we should really call her a scam because she's constantly scamming, her positions on things. Scamala Harris, and a member of the court's family warrants recusal. The court notes that this same argument was already made by defendant's first few motions for recusal. However, defendant contends that the alleged conflict is more egregious now that Vice President Kamala Harris has elevated to presumptive nominee of the Democratic Party for president. The people's position in defendant's motion to renew is a vexatious and frivolous attempt to relitigate an issue that was twice addressed by this court in orders for the first department, then refused to disturb. What's my decision? The court sees no need to repeat the legal analysis contained in its decision of August 11, 2023. A year ago, I wrote on this. At that point, I denied defendant's first motion for recusal. On purposes of the decision, I say that the right to an impartial jurist is a basic requirement to due process, And we're just gonna assume that you had an impartial jurist, despite all appearances to the contrary. In deciding whether to recuse himself, the trial judge must carefully weigh the policy of promoting public confidence in the judiciary against the possibility that those questioning his impartiality may be seeking to avoid the adverse consequences of his presiding over the case. So in other words, that people are basically going to be questioning whether or not you're impartial. And just consider this. Consider this. What he's saying here, the reason this is relevant to the gag is because the gag does restrict Trump from being able to talk about Lauren Mershon and her involvement with the DNC and whether or not this raises questions about his impartiality. So what do you have here? Let's just step back for a minute and realize what's going on here. Okay, Trump is saying you have to be recused because of these ties. What is Mershon's response? No, I don't have to recuse because of these ties, and you're prohibited from talking about those ties. If you're not worried at all about the impact of how people are going to think about it, why the hell are you gagging him? Why are you gagging him? If no one's going to think there's any impropriety from the fact that your daughter is raking in $12 million from the DNC and specifically Kamala Harris, why on earth is he being gagged? Everyone's just going to assume everything's above board. This is the inconsistency in what Mershon's positions are that I don't think enough people are really hitting on. Because he says, I don't have to recuse myself because and not only is there no bias, but the public will not perceive there to be a bias. Yet, I'm going to stop you from talking about it. Why would anyone be affected by it? Why would anyone be affected by it? Unless the public is perceiving that there's bias. Now, they would answer back that, well, people are going to be charged up into harming Lauren Mershon, and I certainly don't think anyone should be charged up. I don't think anybody would be charged up. We've never seen a single soul get charged up and harm someone physically because they were a Trump supporter who was outraged by treatment of Donald Trump. I'm not familiar with every story on earth, but I am unfamiliar with a single story, a single claim that there was some Trump supporter who was so agitated by the way Trump was being treated that they got physically violent with some third party who they deemed to be agitating Trump. Fortunately, I don't ever want to see that happen. But to say that there's some sort of concern for Lauren Mershon when you're saying there's actually nothing wrong here, no one would think there was anything wrong here. If no one would think there's anything wrong here, then there should be no concern that someone's going to be agitated into going after your daughter. That's the inconsistency here. Either people be agitated because they say this is messed up, or people will not be agitated because they'll agree with you that there's nothing wrong here. Everything here is completely kosher. You can't have your cake and eat it too. That's what's so freaking aggravating. The judge participated in establishing, maintaining, and enforcing. In deciding whether to excuse the judge must carefully weigh, the policy of promoting public confidence. How do you have public confidence? By clamping your mouth shut. I guess. Because that's not making people question, confidence in the court. Stated plainly, defendants' arguments are nothing more than a repetition of stale and unsubstantiated claims. A judge should participate in establishing, maintaining, and enforcing high standards of conduct and must personally observe those standards so that integrity and independence of the judiciary will be preserved. Well, I question how the hell the integrity and independence is preserved. So that public, at least that the public has confidence in the integrity of the judiciary, because frankly, your actions are inconsistent with each other. Either you're doing nothing wrong here, irrespective of your daughter's relationships with the DNC, in which case he should be able to talk about it as much as he wants. Or there is something you're doing wrong here, in which case you should be recusing yourself. To me, this is just obvious. This court has been consistent that it welcomes zealous advocacy and creative lawyering. However, counsel has been warned repeatedly that such advocacy must not come at the expense of professional responsibility in one's role as an officer of the court. This sounds like he's threatening Emil Bove. What the heck is happening here? With these fundamental principles in mind, this court now reiterates for the third time that which should already be clear. Innuendo and mischaracterizations do not create a conflict. Recusal is therefore not necessary, much less required. On the quote, on the facts before us, we conclude the judge's impartiality cannot reasonably be questioned based on the judge's relatives' business and or political activities, and the judge is not ethically required to disclose them from the advisory committee. As has been the standard throughout the pendency of this case, this court will continue to base its rulings on the evidence of the law without fear or favor, casting aside undue influence. I am a member of the New York Bar, so I cannot comment any further on that. Defendant has provided nothing new for this court to consider. Counsel has merely repeated arguments that have already been denied by this in higher courts. Defense counsel's reliance and apparent citation to his own prior affirmation, rife with inaccuracies and unsubstantiated claims, is unavailing. As such, defendant's motion, everything is always inaccurate. What was inaccurate? What was inaccurate? He never explained how he found them to be inaccurate. There were no affidavits submitted by his daughter as to what her position was. It's very, 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 very frustrating. It's very frustrating because, like I said, I spent 25 years practicing law in the state of New York. And I'm very proud of the majority of the public statements from the New York judiciary. I do not think that this case has enhanced the reputation of New York's judiciary. And there's been a lot of questionable decisions. So a lot of you may be wondering, Joe, so what the heck is the status of your case? What's the status of your case? Well, the status of my case is this. I and my adversaries have submitted arguments before the New York Court of Appeals as to why it is that the court should take my case and grant me a chance to go in there on appeal. My adversaries' papers don't really address certain basic facts, like the fact that there's a constitutional issue of law. Instead, they try to collaterally attack my entire application. The way they try to collaterally attack it is they say, well, this is all derivative. This is all derivative of Trump, and Trump lost. This is all derivative of Trump. Trump's got his claims, and he's just coming with the same basic claims. That is not at all the case. I am not raising the same claims he has. One of the issues I have is that Trump's attorneys did not hit on the constitutionality or unconstitutionality of his orders in sufficiently direct manner. What do I mean by that? When you say that this gag is wrong, it's unlawful, there's a lot of different bases you can come up with as to why something is wrong or unlawful. The stress that has come from Donald Trump's team is actually reflected in a post from Donald Trump. He posted this out today in response to Judge Merchan's order. Judge Merchan just ruled that I, the Republican candidate for president, and leading in the polls and still under gag order concerning very important things which must be brought to light. I am not allowed to answer reporters' questions. Can you believe this? New York courts refuse to act. This is happening right before the voting begins on September 6th. Suppression and manipulation of the vote, voter interference. This is the real fascist stuff. The old Soviet Union. So much to say, and I'm not allowed to say it. Must get U.S. Supreme Court involved. New York is trying to steal the election. And we saw how they've done this before. We see this over and over again, where it's like they do everything they can to keep out of the public discussion so much of their illicit conduct. We saw that with respect to the suppression of the story of the Hunter Biden laptop in 2020. We see so many different illicit tactics that the left has taken trying to keep him from the White House, whether it was the 14th Amendment issues being raised in Colorado or in Maine or in Illinois, or whether you're talking about the media suppressing stories, or whether you talk about gagging him, whether you're talking about trying to bankrupt him in New York, or whether you talk about all the criminal prosecutions that are happening at the federal level, and then at the state level of New York and the state level of Georgia, they do everything they can to make him a martyr. And acting out of the bounds of like, just win a friggin' election. Just win. Just like present your freaking policies and let the public decide. But that's not what they want. That is not at all what that's the last thing they want. The last thing they want is the public to actually be informed and reaching a decision, because they know their policies suck and they know they're very unpopular and they're self-destructive. So why the heck would anyone vote for them? And that's why they engage in all of these shenanigans to basically try and thwart him every way short of actually beating him on policy arguments and presenting a candidate who doesn't sound like a lunatic, because their ideas are so outside of mainstream America that they need to sort of hide them away and bury them so that people don't really know what it is that they are about. And just sit there saying, oh, okay, I guess these people are really terrible. I keep hearing the news talk about how terrible they are. Very aggravating. But what's frustrating to me is, so when you're arguing against the gag order, I agree with Donald Trump they're unconstitutional. I just don't think his lawyers really made that argument. If you read his statement over here, the way he presents it is, I, the Republican candidate for president and leading polls, am still under gag order. That's not the issue. That's not the issue. This is the way your attorneys frame the issue. This is what they were arguing about with respect to the gag. The heart and soul of their application to overturn that gag order was, well, he's the president, or he's a presidential candidate, and he needs to be able to talk about these things. It's political speech, and you can't suppress political speech. It's the most protected speech out there. And that's technically true. Technically true in the sense that it is the most protected speech. But as I discuss with my attorney Ron Baruti, what does that really mean? Like, how does that translate? What speech are you going to protect because it's political speech and allow that speech to happen, that other speech you would not allow to happen? But this, because it's political speech, we will allow it to happen. There's really no case law that helps draw that line there to tell you that this is speech that must be protected. So while the Supreme Court has recognized that political speech gets the highest respect and recognition, there's never been any case law to really show what that means. And in what way is it more protected? That no other speech will be protected, just political speech. Nobody knows. Since nobody knows, it doesn't really mean very much. And that's what he's hanging his hat on. He's hanging his hat on like, well, the implication of saying, because I'm engaged in political speech and I'm a significant figure in the United States of America, and then I'm the presumptive, now before he was the presumptive, when he was making the arguments, he was the presumptive nominee. Now he is the nominee. Then now all of a sudden now that his speech now carries a higher, holier level. But no one knows what extra speech, this higher, holier level, what that means. So that's a losing argument. So yeah, I don't think he has much chance at all. I don't even know if he got to the Supreme Court if he would win with that argument. There's a much more powerful argument you can make. Much more powerful argument you make is you can't suppress any American the way you're suppressing me. You can't suppress any American the way that suppressing my speech as a criminal defendant is unconstitutional based on the very case law that you cited. If you say it's unconstitutional against America, not because he's the president, not because he's anything significant. No, the strongest argument is I'm an American. And the Supreme Court precedents say you cannot gag an American this way. That's a core First Amendment rights. And you need to establish, first and foremost, that you have a right to gag, that you have a basis to start thinking about a gag. And even if you had that basis, you have to make sure that it's, there's an urgent, compelling need, and that compelling need, that the remedy you're coming up with is as narrowly tailored as possible. This is just basic, fundamental Supreme Court precedent which no one else is talking about other than me. And I don't get why. I don't understand why. I mean, I do understand why. Because I'll tell you this much. I'm not even blaming his attorneys. I'm assuming his attorneys are making the arguments that Trump wants him to make. That he wants them to make. And I thought about this morning. I was like, why would Trump not engage in constitutional arguments? I have to assume that Emil Bove seems like a very intelligent attorney, thought of the similar arguments to what I thought of, and yet didn't really go down that road. Instead, he's really gone down the road of it's political speech, rather than this is just wicked wrong, completely, totally wrong, completely unconstitutional. You can't do this to any American. And I think it's possible. This is speculative on my part. I think it's possible that Trump wants this to be the argument, that he's the president and that they're coming after him. That's what I'm speculating. Because at the end of the day, the reason that he wants to speak is to help his political chances. And I think what he's basically I think he's come up with the perspective that it's politically stronger for him to show that he's being persecuted and that they're not letting him engage in political speech. That's the argument that for him is important, because he wants the public to know that Democrats are shutting him up, even though it's political speech. It's political speech and they're shutting him up. Because that shows his power and strength. That shows their fear of him speaking. So I think that for his perspective, he wants that to be the battleground issue. He wants that to be the legal issue that they're clobbering each other over. Of, is this political speech? And he wants every time to be able to get up there and say, I am not allowed to engage in political speech because Democrats are silencing me with a threat of throwing me in jail. And I think he probably figures that's more effective on the campaign trail than they're silencing Americans in ways that are unconstitutional. This is my speculation. I haven't spoken to anyone from the Trump camp about this. I don't think anyone from the Trump camp would even tell me this. I don't think they would answer it if I could sit down and talk to them. But that's what I speculate is why they made the fight along that line, because it is more consistent with his messaging. You guys think I'm right on that? No, clown, you're completely wrong. It's not that he cannot talk about the fact that there's a policy that or the fact that the judge who's assigned to this case, who issued many decisions against him, has a daughter who raked in $12 million from the DNC. Making that factual statement is not a threat, but he cannot utter that sentence without risking going to jail. So, pardon me, but I'm not the one who sounds insane. Brian Ogden hit me with the 5. Count them, 5. Good Lawgic memberships. Those of you who were brought in by Brian, I missed it. I'm sorry about that, Brian. I don't see it here. Oh, wait, do I have it? Oh, I do have it. Wait, no. Oh, I do have it. Sorry. Peace, love, gifted, courtesy of Brian Ogden. Wait a second. Wait just a cotton picking second. Brian Ogden was gifted membership by Brian Ogden. I have to screenshot this. I don't even know what the heck this is. What the heck is that? How is that possible? How did you do that? Someone explain this to me. That is great. I guess you are. That is great. Well, thank you, Brian. Welcome to the following, Brian. I'm like reading off the list here. I'm like, wait a second. Also, Charles Coe, Denisha Blyther, and James, all gifted courtesy of Brian Odom. Welcome to the following. God bless you. That's impressive. That's impressive. I've never seen that before. I didn't even know that was possible. Wow, that's pretty funny. Well done, Brian. Well done indeed. All right. All right. So that's the backdrop for you on the whole ungagging Trump element, and that's why I speculate that he's raising those specific arguments. But did I get the first name right? Did I get the first name? I said Denisha Blyther. Well, welcome. I hope you said thank you to Brian. All right. And the final story I want to cover tonight, before I sign off and go over to locals, before I sign off, because I am going to be going over to locals at goodlogic.locals.com. That's goodlogic.locals.com. Final thing I want to cover is this issue right here. Is this the final thing? Wait, before I go there. Want to cover that? No. I don't. Yeah. Let's see. Donald Trump voted today. That's right. Down in South Florida, he cast his ballot and came out of the voting booth and held an impromptu session. She spoke with a gaggle of reporters. Let's hear him speak.
Well, thank you very much. Great honor to vote. You've done a fantastic job here, and we appreciate it. We think we're doing very well. We just had a poll that shows we're doing very well. And we have an interesting couple of months ahead of us. I'm going to North Carolina right now. We're going to speak on the economy. It's basically a speech on what's going on with our economy. It's gone very bad under this group of people, with inflation, with the economy itself, and so many other things. The other thing we're going to talk a little bit on is crime. If you look at the migrant crime in New York, it's been out of control, and it is everywhere, as I predicted a long time ago. And we'll be talking a little bit about crime and all of the people that have come into our country illegally, millions and millions. I think it's close to 20 million, maybe it's more than 20 million. And they shouldn't have been allowed to come here. It's causing a tremendous problem. It's causing death. And just it's been a horror show. Nobody's seen anything like it. And it's only going to get worse. They should not have allowed this to happen to our country. With that being said, I'm leaving for right now North Carolina. Do you have a question?
Yes, sir. What has the FBI told you about the...
Well, look at this. Somebody who takes questions. A candidate who takes questions. Do you have a question? I'm here to answer. Tell me what your question is. I'm ready to go. Speaking of someone who has questions, Barb loves Alaska. Someone, however many, need to be held accountable for murder and attempted murder ×3 for what happened on July 13th. I could not agree with you more on that. Oh, my God. Somebody does need to be held accountable. Johnny Rebs saying, Joe, got you a meme on locals. I'll try to check it out.
Well, they're looking at it, and they're doing it very professionally, and it looks like it's Iran doing it, because Iran is no friend.
So wait, what's the question?
What has the FBI told you about the hack on your campaign?
Well,
the hack
they're
on his
looking at
campaign.
it, and they're doing it very professionally, and it looks like it's Iran doing it, because Iran is no friend of mine, and a lot of bad signals get sent. But it looks like it's Iran doing it, and the reason is because I was strong on Iran, and I was protecting people in the Middle East that maybe they aren't so happy about that. So that's what it seems to be, Iran.
Is that what the FBI told you specifically, that it was Iran?
I don't want to say exactly, but it was Iran.
And you said Harris's crowd sizes were AI and that there weren't people there. There's all kinds of video evidence and people who were there who have proven that false. Can you tell us about why you made that claim?
Well, I can't say what was there, who was there. I can only tell you about ours. We have the biggest crowds ever in the history of politics. We have crowds that nobody's ever seen before, and we continue to have that. We have a level of enthusiasm that nobody's seen before. They want to make America great again. That's what's happening. We're going to make it great again. Right now, we have a failing nation. We're in a failing nation, and become in many ways a third world nation. And we're not going to let that happen. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
There you go. There you go. All right. So his voting today was an interesting thing. Now I can understand, like, look, he figures he's probably going to be busy on election day. He's not going to be around. He's not going to be able to vote. He's probably going to be campaigning and running around different places. So he wants to cast his vote today. Alternatively, it could be that he's trying to send a message to the GOP endorsing early voting. Now, I have had several discussions over the last couple of years about whether or not the GOP should engage in early voting. We all saw in 2020 that the GOP was like, don't vote early, don't vote by mail, just go in and cast your ballots on election day. And that was the messaging that the GOP gave to their base all over the place. We kept hearing, don't vote early, don't mail in ballots. We saw a couple of videos which looked like there was some ballots that had been trashed by the post office or somebody, or had been negligently carried. And there had been some issues that a lot of people raised, issues and concerns that if you vote early, you're throwing your vote in the garbage. On the other hand, we saw Democrats came out there and basically were voting left and right by mail, just dropping the mail and just kicking it out. And we know that they got millions of votes more than Trump through the mail. And I raise a question because we saw also other issues that we saw that cropped up on election day 2020 was there were all sorts of issues with lines and machine failures and different issues, which a lot of people alleged were purposeful. We saw in Arizona with Katie Hobbs in the last election, 2022, all sorts of people not being able to vote and having to fill out markers and things of that nature, and questions about things breaking down in ways that were unexpected. And some people would say unexpected. Others would say genuinely unexpected. But that there was a lot of issues with election day voting, which certainly you would think harmed the GOP. It harmed us in that, on election day, you basically have, let's just say, a 2-to-1 margin of Republicans coming out there and who are planning on voting. Those numbers could be smaller, could be higher, but certainly a significantly higher percentage of Republicans voting on election day, because the DNC told their voters, get your vote in now. They're saying that through September and October. We saw that on and on. Get your vote in, mail in your ballot, mail in your ballot, mail in your ballot, mail in your ballot, mail in your ballot. It was just like relentless. And the GOP sat back very confidently, like, oh, yeah, we're just waiting for election day. We're just waiting for election day. And I'm not saying that was the wrong strategy, but it didn't seem like it played out in ways that the GOP was hoping. I know a lot of you would say it has nothing to do with that. The issues that arose on election day had nothing to do with the fact that there were all these different ballot issues. But my question for you is, do you think that we should change strategy at this point and start telling people, get your freaking ballot in the mail, go out there, or at the very least, do what Trump did in places where they have early voting. You can go in person and vote now rather than waiting until November. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that the message, and that's what I really want to, and I had one person who's a very strong Trump supporter, she hosts a lot of spaces, who when I told her that, I think we should consider changing that message about voting early, she was livid at me, yelling at me. That's crazy. They're going to throw your vote in the garbage. Then you're throwing you might as well just not vote at all. That we saw how corrupt the postal service is. You can't be telling people to vote early. Don't tell people to vote early. Don't tell people to vote early. It's terrible, 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 terrible. And I was like, so we should start on election day walking in there with like, now we're behind by 10 million votes. Like, is that like the healthiest plan? I mean, here we see Trump himself voting early. So my question is, Gloria says you can track your ballot. Is that really true? I think that might depend on the state. So I wanted to hear from you guys. I'm going to open up the phone line. Those of you who think we should not be, I'd prefer people, I think probably most of you would say we should be telling people to vote early. But I want to hear from you. And especially if you think we should not be voting early, I want you to make the case that it's a bad move for us to tell people to vote early. Because I'd love to have this conversation with some of you. The number to call is 972-454-0703. That's 972-454-0703. I'm going to throw it in the chat here. Call in number 972-454-0703. And I really want to hear from you guys on that. Lily says, I can't go on X. I was banned for telling someone I'd pew-poo him and came my property and mess my kid. It's legal in Florida. So you send me in the mail. Send me a good, when I say, send me by email at goodlogic@gmail.com. Just give me the names of the different races you want me to look at. Okay, in different districts, and I'll try to do some research for you personally. Okay, goodlogic@gmail.com. Polls are open. Cast your vote now. If those are the rules, you might as well take advantage of them. Your enemy, or nope, I had it right.
Call from Kimmy Hunt.
Kimmy.
Hi, Joe.
Kimmy, bobin me, banana fama, bopin me. How you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
I am awesome. Good. So, what are your thoughts? Vote early or vote on election day?
I always voted on election day, but I just called my county board of elections today and requested an application to do an absentee voting for the first time in my entire life.
Why?
And here's why. Used to be Ohio absentee ballots were counted after the election day votes were counted. Ohio has changed that, and the first votes they will count is the absentee ballots. Those are the first ones that will be posted, and then they will be counting the election day votes after that. So, and they also put in the ability to track my absentee ballot, so I can make sure that it gets where it needs to go.
So the only way you get a mail-in ballot is if you ask for an absentee ballot. They're not giving you.
In Ohio, what you have to do is you call, or you can print out an application online that you have to request. You have to fill out an application along with your driver's license phone number, your driver's license number, and that kind of thing, and verify that you are who you are. And then you send in the application. They review your application, and then they send you an absentee ballot.
Okay, so
there's no mass mail out of ballots in the state of Ohio.
Well, that's good. Unfortunately, it seems to be these battleground states where they're just like, let's flood as many ballots out there as possible. And although Ohio was a battleground state, I don't know if they are anymore. I don't know if I would call them a battleground state.
We aren't anymore because we cleaned up our voter rolls.
Yeah, that's really.
And we did that in, I think, 2012, right around in there, maybe 26. Right before 2016 happened. And once that happened, it was like everything flipped to Republican in Ohio pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, and that would explain, because that would really explain a lot, because I had all these different questions like why Ohio would be so disparate from the other Rust Belt states like Pennsylvania or Michigan that surround her. And that would explain it. I mean, that would really explain it.
Yeah. Michigan, Illinois. Well, Illinois is one of the Rust Belt states, but Illinois would be, if it wasn't for Chicago, Illinois would be red, kind of the same as New York.
Yeah.
But as far as like Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, they have Democrat governors and Democrat secretaries of state, and they have not cleaned up their voter rolls. Our Secretary of State, Yost, he's been on with Steve Bannon before and explained how Ohio cleaned up our voter rolls. And he goes in, several times a year and keeps cleaning up the voter rolls. And it's like, and all the, and we get our election results quickly too, but they've changed a lot of ways how they do things. And for the first time, I would say this time, I'm like, well, I can't predict what's going to go on November 5th, and I just want to go ahead and since it used to be that this is the first time that I've known of, and I don't know when they changed it necessarily, but the absentee ballots will be tabulated before the election day votes.
Which a lot of states refuse to. A lot of states refuse to do that, and I never understood why. Like, why is it that you're counting these votes after election? Why can't you start counting them?
It doesn't make sense. Like Pennsylvania has like 3 or 4 days or something that they can continue. They're going to do their absentee ballots and their mail-in ballots after they count the election day ballots, and that's why they take so long. California does the same thing. That's why they take so long, because they have so many mail-in. Those should be tabulated. If they're mailed in, there's a deadline. You have to have it in by a certain date, and if you don't, that's a cutoff. And those should be able to be tabulated even before election day.
Right.
A couple days before election day.
That's the way it should be.
Yeah, it should be, and that's how Ohio's changed it. When I saw that, I went in today onto the Secretary of State's website, and I saw that, and I went, okay, all right, that makes me comfortable. I'm going to go ahead for the first time. I'm going to go ahead and bank my vote, get it in, and then I don't have to worry about getting sick on election day, or it snowing 2 feet of snow, or me getting an injury, stumbling and falling, or something like that happening, or when I voted in 2020, I had to wait 2 hours in line at 7:00 in the morning to vote.
Right. And that's the other thing, is they make you wait in line and in line and in line, and it's like some of these places it's just impossible. As it happens, like my personal experience is I've never had to wait more than 10 minutes to vote. I'm always, whether it's both in New York when I was living in New York and living in New Jersey, I've never had to wait more than maybe 15 minutes, and that was in the building on a line where I could see I can count how many people are in front of me. It's not like one of these ride lines where it's like 2-hour waiting from this point. Never had that at all. But that could just be the good fortune of where I've lived. What?
Well, I'm in a suburb of Dayton, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
We're not talking about a highly populated area like I think New Jersey would be.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's amazing. When I went in 2020, I went to vote. There was a 2-hour wait. I took one of those what do you call this? Lawn chairs that you can buy at the store for $5 that folds out.
Right.
And I took that with me and I sat in line and I just kept scooting forward because I can't stand for more than 10 minutes at a time.
Right.
So that's what I took with me so that I could, vote. And it was that way. I thought I'll go at 7:00 in the morning and there won't be hardly anybody there. I could not believe how many people were voting, and everybody had a mask on. It was a mess. The whole thing was just a mess. So this is what I'm going to do first time in my life. And in fact, my 86-year-old mother, I called her and told her, and she went ahead and called the Board of Elections and got her absentee ballot application being mailed to her too. So we're going to get it handled this way. I think anybody should do that. Check what your states, how they count those absentee ballots, and if they feel comfortable with it, go ahead and do it. It's smart.
All right. Well, I appreciate the call.
All right.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you so much. Good luck to you, and good job. I appreciate you getting information out there. Have a great night, Kimmy.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, the number is 972-454-0703. That's 972-454-0703. I'm going to make a banner here. The question I have is, should the GOP, I'll make it to Republicans just so everyone's clear here. Should Republican Party push voters to vote early? Should they push voters to vote early? In the past, they didn't. In the past, they discouraged it. But my question is, should we change that now? Some people say yes, some people say no. Especially if you say no. Hear from you, especially if
Call from Perez.
Hello.
Hi, Joe.
Who is this?
This is Therese.
Therese, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great.
So we're in Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
I get the mail-in ballot. I've done that since we lived in Nevada.
Mm-hmm.
But I keep it, and then I go to the polls because I don't trust them with the mail-in ballots. You can check your ballot if you voted, but you can't check how you voted. And the only reason I'm saying that is because when I first started voting in Nevada, they gave you like a little printout when you left, like a little receipt on what you voted, which I've never seen again, which I loved because you can, always do the cross check with it.
Right.
Yeah, they don't do that anymore.
That is frustrating.
And you guys were just talking about wait lines and stuff. I just voted in the primary, and it's very close to my house at the little high school. Super easy, super quick, in and out. I had no problems, but my friend went, and she took her mail-in ballot with her as like a guide because she doesn't trust it either, and to fill it out. And they confiscated it from her. And she said, "Can I take a picture of it?" They said, "Absolutely not." And they just took it from her.
Wow.
So weird. So weird. And they do the Sharpie little pens here in Arizona. So I always take my own pen as well.
So how does that work? How does it work with the Sharpie pens?
Well, they say that it bleeds, but I just take my own little ballpoint black pen.
Mm-hmm.
I always have one in my purse anyway, so I just use my own. And I did take my own ballot, but I stuffed mine in my purse before I left, not knowing that it was going to be an issue because I always take my mail-in ballot with me as a guide as well.
Right.
But my friend Kay, she had hers exposed and they confiscated hers. It was so weird. So weird. Arizona is bizarre.
So should we be pushing people to vote early? That's my question.
Okay, so here's my thing. I'm apprehensive like you are, but Dan Bongino has been really, really pushing it because of that whole State Department threat with, the malware attacks and whatnot. And so I don't know. I'm leery.
Right.
I'm considering it, but I mean, Dan doesn't typically steer people wrong. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I like Dan Bongino also. I think that he's a smart guy.
He's just afraid that there's going to be shenanigans on that day. And here's the thing, like, okay, so we're voting how we're voting. Again, like that receipt that I used to get in Nevada, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we don't get that now. And I'm not sure if it even matters anyway. But, like, are they really counting them? Mail in versus going to the thing and, I don't know how they do it with you guys, but they have us put our ballot directly into the machine after we're finished. And it says, okay, accepted. And then you go. You see the little, green check mark.
So the machines keep getting updated by me. My recollection is the last time. I mean, I'm old school. I remember like clicking off, like they would have like a series of things you would click off. Like when you go into the booth, they had a big red lever. This
right.
how old, right? You're old.
Yeah.
You probably remember this also. A big red lever, and you close the curtain by cranking on that lever, and the curtain will close behind you. And
right,
then
we don't have curtains.
And then you click off, the different candidates that you want to vote
slide.
for.
Yes.
And then when you pull the lever to open the curtain, everything would clear off, and you wouldn't even know that it tabulated properly, but you just sort of assume that it did, that whatever punch cards were put in there were cut properly based on how you ticked off your votes.
Right. I'm 54, so
now,
I totally know what you're talking about.
So am I. So am I. So there you go. Okay, so now the last time that I went to vote, the way it was is now we have a computer screen, and you click off, and they tell you, like to confirm, and they actually show you what you're voting for, and they show you a receipt behind the glass.
So it's on a computer screen and not.
It's
like
on a computer
ballot?
screen, but then they print out the paper, and they show, and you can read the paper behind the glass as to who you voted for, and then that sort of rolls away from you when you click OK. That the paper is, so that I'm okay with. Because I can actually double check that the paper that's being printed out is consistent with what I'm checking up. Like they'll say, for president you're voting for this, and for Senate you're voting for that, and whatever, the House you're voting for this, and that's how they run it here. But I think it's fascinating to listen to different systems that they have. So you think, just to wrap up, you think that we should vote early?
I'm kind of leaning toward it. I haven't decided yet. We have what until?
Dan Bongino is saying vote early, so you're like, let's go with what he suggests.
Well, he's really, really stressing it. Please bank your vote, just because of the shenanigans. Like they're saying that, oh, there's going to be a problem, but it's not going to affect your vote. Wink, wink. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so he's saying bank your vote early, but if there's going to be shenanigans that day anyway, what difference does it make? I'm really not sure. How do we know, Joe? How do we know?
Yeah.
I mean, especially in Arizona with the shenanigans they pulled last freaking election. I mean, they called the election before it even closed the polls. I was losing my mind.
Well, really what it's boiling down to, if you think about it, you're sort of hitting on what it boils down to is which shenanigans frighten you more. Like which one? That's basically is like which this is what a sick country we're living in. Where it's like we know there's going to be screw ups, and the question is which one is least likely to harm my vote.
Exactly. Like, do we mail in vote, because that was great, and that was. Do we harvest? Do we go and mail in person? Do we early vote? Like, what is right anymore? Because who knows anymore? Like, honestly.
Anyway, let me grab the next call. Thank you for the call so much.
Nice
Have a great night.
You
too.
Bye,
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. So the question is, should the Republicans be pushing early voting or not? Rest-Town's weighing in saying ours should vote early because it gives these two mixed sources they have to sabotage. Previously, they sabotage day of and know they'll hit Republican votes. You'd have to get a lot of Republicans to vote early to get that balance.
Call from
Heath.
Hey.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. Man, I love your show.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you calling in.
Big fan.
Where are you calling from?
Wisconsin.
Ah, Cheese State. Nice.
Yes.
Nice. Do you know what percentage of people, registered voters in Wisconsin, voted in the 2020 election?
I don't know, man, but
It was
I've been
astronomically high, like not believably high. Like it's like
no.
Yeah.
No, I was with a group. We went to like Tony Evers' house.
Mm-hmm.
He's our governor.
Right.
Yeah, dude. I was with like a group that was like big on this, and it was like, and I'd ask these people, like, have you ever looked into like, have you ever been political?
Right.
And they're like, no, never. I've never been political. And I'm like, it was Trump. It was Trump. 2020. They were like completely changed. It changed all these people. And there's so many people that changed that it was crazy to me to see the amount of people that never actually like looked at politics.
Now, what part of
and now,
now they're engaged in politics. Yeah.
What's up?
Then now they're engaged.
No, they weren't.
Right.
In Trump's election in 2020, engaged them.
Right. So here's my question. First and foremost, what part of Wisconsin are you in the city, or are you more rural?
Yeah, I am actually in Pewaukee, which is right outside of Milwaukee.
Okay. All right.
So we're between Milwaukee and Madison. Madison's where we really cause problems. We shut down streets and protest. When they shut down for COVID,
mm-hmm.
we went there and we really caused havoc. It was fun as hell.
You said havoc. Oh my god.
Yeah.
That is great. That is great. Like Mark Richards with his havoc. It
was fun as hell, man. We'd like roundabouts. We owned the roundabouts with our flag cars. We'd have all these cars with flags on them, and we'd just keep going around the roundabouts. Around. I know that's kind of asshole-ish, but we just wanted to make a point, and kind of what we did.
I don't even know what you're talking about now. So let me ask you this: is your district in 2020, like what percentage do you think leans Trump then compared to now? Do you think it's relatively the same? Like how does your jurisdiction break down?
No, I think mine's a Trump district. As long as it's not stolen, I think we're solid. As long as people are out watching the polls. My wife is a poll worker.
Oh yeah, cool.
So yeah, as long as but it's in an area that doesn't matter, right? We need Milwaukee. We need people watching in Milwaukee. We need people watching in Madison.
Yep.
We don't need people watching in my red area.
Right. Right.
But I mean, the Democrats were sent to our polling location to observe, and she was being pressured, and she was asked about her ID and all this other stuff. Man, the Democrats are in full stride because they're commie bastards.
Yep. Well said indeed, Steve. So what do you think about early voting? Yes or no? We should be pushing for early voting or no?
I don't like the early voting because then they know how much they have to steal. That's my issue with the early voting. Because you look at the fraud. You look at the fraud in 20. 2020, it happened way at the end of the night, right? We won, and then it was just they just had to figure out how many votes they needed. I don't know. I like Bongino too. I'd listen to her every day as I do you. But
no, he's great. That's a really great point that I had not thought of, Steve. Like as far as keeping them in the dark, it's just how strong the Republican turnout is. Like it sort of makes it harder for them to steal the election. It's so sad that this is the environment we're living in here.
I know.
That it's like, how do we stop them from being completely like just unethical thieves and stealing the election?
They're detached from reality. It's like, look at what you're paying for all this food. Look at what you're paying for your energy bill. Look at what you're paying. There's no way that Trump's going to lose if it's a fair election. There's no freaking way, bud.
I agree with you. I agree with you. All right, Steve, thank you so much for the call. I appreciate you, my brother. Have a great night.
All right, bro.
Take care.
Later.
Bye. That's a great point that I hadn't considered. If they know how much they have to steal, it makes it easier for them to try and figure out how to do that. Warren says Oklahoma requires notarized absentee ballots and no harvesting. I recommend it here if you so desire. You recommend early voting over here. Okay. That's. I'm very against the whole ballot harvesting. There's no way that ballot harvesting is not going to be corrupt. Invariably, it will be. American Dreamer says if a loved one died recently, contact election board. Tell them. Easy forms. They don't vote Democrat. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much, American Dreamer. The question I have here is, should the GOP be pushing for the early vote? We saw Trump went out and voted today, and traditionally Republicans have been pushing do not vote early. And now the question is, should we change our tactic on that? And I really want to hear from you guys on that. The number is 972-454-0703, 972-454-0703. Who am I speaking with?
Sun Wukong.
One more time.
Sun Wukong.
Oh, Sun Wukong. How are you, my brother?
Baruch Hashem, I'm doing good. Everything's busy nowadays.
Where are you calling me from? 443. What area?
My house.
What area, what part of the country you living in?
Well, currently I'm out near San Diego, California.
You gave me a very, very solid Baruch Hashem there, like an Elif Yid right there. That was very solid one.
Oh yeah, I mean you have to have positive perspective in life. It doesn't matter. He's in charge, so that's what matters.
I was in San Diego once and was astonished at how remarkably amazing the weather in San Diego was.
It's almost not fair.
It's
not fair just how nice
if
the weather
you can
is.
just imagine just whatever you think is perfect weather, it's less perfect than it is in San Diego at this moment. It is amazing weather.
Yeah, it's perfect. After 9 o'clock up until 9 o'clock in the morning, it's kind of wet and depressing and stuff. And then all of a sudden by 9:30 the sun comes out and everything's perfect.
Just gorgeous.
Sargon of Akkad said that he came to California.
Yeah.
And he was looking around, and you know how it's like it's almost like the zombie apocalypse over here. And it's like, what is the dude? He's he's walking around, he gets it. He's like, does it really matter that there are homeless people and that stuff's on fire and there's drugs everywhere? I mean, if the weather is just so nice, it just bakes you into this softness. You just fall into this hypnosis.
Well, I actually have a theory. That, everyone always thinks the East Coast is being very hard and fast-paced and edgy, and the West Coast is being soft. And my theory that I came up with this 10 years ago is that it's purely weather-related. Because when you're living in New York, it's like you literally have to steel yourself and brave the elements, whether it's summer or winter. It's less so. It's milder now in the winter. But it's like if you live in an environment that you literally have to sort of steel yourself to walk outside and go get something done, it's like you just feel an urgency to make sure that the task is finished, and you're pushing, or it's blazing hot. you know that you have limited window opportunity to get things done. And it just motivates you to sort of like push and push and push, where you become a pushier person and more aggressive, and you get things done. If you're a human who's living in an environment where it's just like amazing weather all the time, you're just like, all right, I can do it tomorrow. Tomorrow work just is fine. Like, it's a nice day today. Like, it's just sort of like way more chilled all the time. It's also puts you in a bad mood when you're in bad weather. You're just in a much more laid back mood when the weather is nice. I really believe that the difference in temperament between East Coast and West Coast is 100% a reflection of just whether you have to deal with braving the elements all the time versus, for like 10 months out of the year, you're braving the elements versus 10 months out of the year, the elements are just amazing.
Yeah.
Does that make
Joe
sense
Rogan,
to you?
It does. Joe Rogan also has a comedy bit about it. He said, because he grew up in Boston, he remembered, like, because there's ice everywhere, and, like, the weather kind of changes the way you talk. So now you all know, like, you're from the same place. It's like, you're not from around here. We stick together, right? And, like, he remembers as a kid, he saw a guy was spinning out, going through a red light, like, completely like spinning out on the ice, and he just remembers as the guy is spinning out, he's sipping coffee and just like fixing himself as he's going through, like no problems, like this was just Tuesday,
Yeah.
So, yeah, but onto this voting thing.
Yeah.
So, given my situation, I'm actually not from the West Coast. I'm actually an East Coast guy, but I'm out here for my job, basically. I absentee ballot. I've done that for basically the last two big elections, 2020 and 2016.
Okay.
So I do absentee ballots. I recommend everybody, like, if you want to vote early and they allow you to vote early. If you don't, you want to go in person. I think, like, I don't really think that that's what actually matters. I think what matters more is what you do outside of just voting. It's going to take more than voting if you want to win. Because you already know that there's a side of the country that will win no matter what. And you have to get politically involved. That's about it.
So what steps have you taken in that direction?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm in the service. There's not a lot I can do.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So what would you recommend to listeners? What would you recommend to listeners?
Volunteer to help count. Volunteer to help count ballots. Help people register. Find ways to create ballot places in your local area. Contact your local voting centers to see how you can get involved. Whatever political action committees. Talk to people around you about politics. As it so happens, where I am, almost everybody agrees with me on just about every single thing. So, but I wouldn't say that two people are alike in the service. So, you know how it is. A certain kind of person joins to serve. But, you have to get involved. You have to get into it. And you have to be able to call them out in person to be able to, supervise and qualify. Because they're going to get away with what they can get away with. And they're only going to get away with it if we let them. Daylight's the best disinfectant. At the very least, the day of, when you see something going bad and you call that out and you highlight that all over social media, that creates enough of a hullabaloo that they just get frozen in the seat. Daylight's the best disinfectant.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much for the call. I really appreciate you, brother.
Yeah. So, Yitzhak Hashem, God should give us what we want. And hopefully what we want is also what we need.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, brother. Appreciate the call. Okay. Have a good night, my friend. All right, I'll take one or two more calls before I got to get out of here. I'm just going to remind you all, I'm slated to have a locals tonight. In the locals, I'm going to be sharing with you a killer meme. It's not really a meme. It's more of a vid clip, but still really, really funny. And I can't show it here on YouTube. That's one of the things I'm going to be showing on locals. The other thing I'm going to be covering is two opposite direction decisions that were made by state Supreme Courts today regarding pro-choice versus pro-life. And it's fascinating because the one that went pro-choice was actually a red state. And the one that went pro-life was certainly more of a purple state at the very least. So, and I just thought that the contrast between these two decisions, as far as the direction that it's pushing, or seems to be pushing, is really interesting. So we're going to talk about those decisions as well as sharing with you that meme. That's a goodlogic.locals.com. The link is in the description below. Link is in the description below. And the it's also pinned to the chat in Rumble and in YouTube. You just click the link. As I've told you many times before, and I'll tell you again, the fee for locals is $5 a month that I know not everyone can afford. It's meant to come from your entertainment budget, and not everyone has an entertainment budget because we're living in a Biden economy. That being the case,
Call from Denise.
If you cannot afford the $5 per month and you don't have the money for it, I want you to please send me an email or a text over on Twitter asking for a code, and I will hook you up. The reason that I have that $5 a month thing is designed to motivate people to kick in those who can't afford it. If you cannot afford it, I will take care of you forever. I will never be asking you for money from anyone who cannot afford it. Now, you're going to have to put in a code every month, and that's okay. I'm going to tell you right now that what I do is I run a code for 6 months at a time. And meaning you're not able to use the same code twice. So I set up like a main phrase, and that's for the first month, and the next month it's the same phrase with number 2 after it, the next month with number 3 after it, the next month number 4, 5, 6, etc. So that way, for up to 6 months, and then when I start a brand new code, just ask me again. I'll hook you up again. I'll do that with you for the rest of my career. Okay? I don't want anyone to be paying money who can't afford it. I don't want to keep anyone out because they can't afford it. I don't want anyone being embarrassed. I actually was looking at my email right now, and I have a lineup of people who are asking me to send them a code, and I plan on taking care of that before I begin my locals. Okay? And the email is goodlogic@gmail.com. You send me an email, I will hook you up with a code, and you put it in there. It will ask you for a credit card. I can't get away around that. But it's not going to charge your credit card. I don't want it to charge your credit card. But that way, I guess they're making sure you're an adult or whatever it is. Anyway, that's the way I have it set up. I urge you all to join me over there. I'm going to be going over there. I'm supposed to be starting at 12:45. I'm going to start exactly 12:45. I'm going to take this call from Denise and probably one more call. And then I'm going to shut down here. But I'm going to urge you to join me over on Locals at goodlogic.locals.com. Link to the exact places in the description below. How are you tonight, Denise?
I'm doing well, Joe. How are you?
That was a mouthful. I'm good.
That was a mouthful.
Yeah.
So about the voting, I am in Missouri, and I have to vote early because I'm a supervisory election judge. So unfortunately, we are highly.
What does a supervisor election judge do?
So a supervisory judge here, basically, if there's any questions, if they can't find the people in the poll pad, or if there's any issues at all, they send them to us. We're at the edge of the table. So, typically we have we have a bipartisan team, or sets of 2 bipartisan teams. Typically we have 6 people total. Sometimes just 4 depending on the election. So the supervisory basically just, if we can't figure it out, then we have to call the election courthouse, whatever, and then send them over there and they can fix it. But usually we can find their system, or we can do like provisionary ballots and stuff like that. So regular judges don't do that stuff. So
cool.
Just a little step up. Yeah.
So what do you think about early voting?
I'm not a fan.
Why?
I think, just because it's all the shenanigans in 2020, and I think it's been happening for a long time before that, but not to the scale of 2020. I think the mail-in ballots or early voting
early voting, if you do it in person, isn't as bad. So it's definitely better than mail-in ballots. But I think election day is election day. It's not election month. It's not election season. It's election day. It should be one day in person, paper ballots, no machines, and it should all be counted at the precinct level. So we should have smaller precincts. They should count at the precinct and then turn those numbers in. And here in Missouri, or at least Greene County, where I live, we do everything by bipartisan teams. So everything is checked and balanced. Our what's the word I'm looking for? Chain of custody is everything has to be signed off by both parties, and we have to take, right now we have a central polling location that we take all the ballots and the media stick inside the machine and some other things, the poll pads and everything like that. We have to take those to the central polling location after we get everything, after the polls are closed and we get everything counted and closed up and, organized, then we have to take those. And it's a lot of work. It's
I'm
a
sure.
very long day.
I'm
Our
sure.
polls open at 6 a.m. and they close at 7. So,
You're not Denise Ann, are you?
Yes.
Oh, you are Denise Ann.
Yep.
Okay, so because I didn't get to your rant, which says, Joe, it could also be he doesn't want to cause an issue on primary election day. His presence could cause a crowd to form and prevent people from voting in a timely manner. It's a great point. It's a great point. It could be wrong. I assume that he plans on being busy on election day. So
it could be.
Yeah. But I'll tell you where I stand on this. Where I stand on it is this. If you can do early voting election at your normal location, I would think that's totally nothing. I would recommend doing that. That probably is optimal. The sooner you can get that vote in, get it done, because you never know. God forbid something happens, someone get into an accident that week or something like that. It's like why not get your vote in when you can, knock it off, and this way you know it's done. So if you can actually know that you're getting your ballot in by going down to the same location you normally vote and voting days, weeks in advance, I think that makes sense. If you cannot do that, because most locations I think you cannot do that. I don't think I can go into my local place today. I think it's a school. I think they're shut down. You can't go in there. They don't have the voting booths set up there now. So I would say this. I would not trust the post office. I don't trust the post office because you don't know. All you need is some wacko postal guy who hates Trump and he feels like, this is a Trump district. Someone's and there might be some markings on the ballot. I don't know that let him know that it's coming from someone who's a registered Republican. I would avoid sending it by mail unless if you're an older person. And the only way that you can, in that case, I would say if you're an older person, someone who's retired or 70 or above, I would say then maybe I would go that route just to know that, in case something, God forbid, happens with your health or something like that, you don't have to worry about getting your vote in. So in that case, then I would probably say rely. Like if my dad asked me, I would say, yeah, get your ballot in now. My dad's, God bless him, is 83 years old. So I would say to him, or 82, I would say to him, get your ballot in now. Like, well, what do you got to wait? Why would you want to wait online and stand there or, with his wife? It's like she's also 80. Like, what the heck is happening here? Just get it in now. That much faith I would have in the post office. If you're, if you're not a senior citizen, if you're somewhere between 18 and 70, I would say that if they have the big ballot box places that they have, that I would trust that you can drop off your ballots there. And that I would say, go take care of that also. Like if they had a place for me to have a drop box for me to drop off my ballot, then I would be okay with that. So in other words, I don't want to trust the mail unless you're a senior citizen, and in which case I would trust the mail. And if they have early voting in your location and that you can go down to the place, I would go there. If they have ballot boxes, those I would trust that you can have your drop off of your thing there. But I think that covers all scenarios. If they don't have that, in that case, I would say go with election day, just because I don't trust the postal workers at all. I think that they're. And I'm not saying that as an entity they're bad, but you don't know if your dude, who the guy or girl who's handling your route, is some lunatic. You just don't know.
Right.
It really could be.
Well, and how much mail is misplaced over the course of a year?
Right.
From the U.S. Post
Yes.
Office. I mean,
yes. Yes.
So,
yeah.
Whether it's in intent, through intention or not, I mean, there's a lot of mistakes that happen in the USPS. So I agree with that 100%. And like you said, if you can't vote on election day, there should be, an option. I personally would prefer to vote on election day. Unfortunately, especially this November, I think it's going to be crazy. I'll be lucky if I'm going to be able to go home and let my dog out to go to the bathroom and get back there, because I haven't worked. This will be my first presidential, but I heard that it is chaos.
I'm sure.
My precinct is my precinct has like 3,200 or so, a little over 3,200. So, which we didn't get a very good turnout for the primaries. We had like maybe 5 or 6% people show up.
I think primaries are always tiny percentage. They always are.
Well, we were expecting 32%, and my precinct only got like, that's really bad.
I guess that's really low. All right. Well, thank you so much for the call. I appreciate you, Denise. Have a great night.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, take care. Bye-bye. I'll take one more call here before I close out here. Sun Wukong says, should be, if you don't play the game, you don't win. You play to win the game. That's Herm Edwards, former coach of the New York Jets, who couldn't win a game all season unless it was the last game of the season and his team was long eliminated. Win to screw up their draft position because you
call from
mystery.
You play to win the game. That's what you do. You play to win the game. Also, we got the leaders reserved, so it's our fault if we lose. It isn't a spectator sport. That's true. How are you?
I'm good. How you doing, Joe?
I'm great. What's going on with you?
Nothing much, man. I'm just watching the show. I haven't been able to super chat in a while because I got a new phone. I don't remember my password. But
that's all right.
Don't worry
about
all right. So about this voting early thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in Texas, right, in the heavily Republican area, so I really don't worry about much of the voting.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of Republicans here, but I do go early, not like super early, but like the last week, like the last couple of days or the week before early voting ends, and we use a computer. They give you a code and a paper, and then you enter your code. You put the paper in the machine. You select your people, and then it hits it in. It prints it out. You expect it, and you walk over to the other one, and you put it in there, and then you're done.
So, where do you stand on early voting? Should we be telling the GOP to do the early voting or not?
Yeah, I mean, as far as depending on your area, I've never done it on election day, and I've only voted for Trump. But I'd really like one day paper ballots. However, I think everybody should, like they said, bank the vote. Make sure we get as many votes in we can, because that's what the Democrats are doing. They're pulling every trick out of the book. We have to get as many people in the polls. I take other people with me. I take my nana, my nephew's gonna be turning 18. I got my son registered to vote. He's 20. This is the first. He's 20, so he's gonna vote. And I'm trying to get my wife to vote. She's like, she doesn't believe in it, but I'm like, you're coming with me. And so she's registered now, and we're gonna make it a family affair. Everybody's going.
There you go. There you go. My mom was always a big believer in voting. In fact, she was a history teacher, and she would teach in private schools, and she would tell her students, if you don't vote, you don't count. It's really that simple.
And if you don't vote, I don't want to hear you complain about it.
So, but what about early voting specifically? Should I be telling my audience, go out there early vote, in your opinion?
Well, I think the Trump campaign has actually said bank your vote and like make it too big to rig. As long as we have them in there, and like I said, it all depends on the county or where you're at. Because I'm in a small town, but if you're in a heavy Democrat, get in there, do it, and give me it as you can,
as early as you can. You're saying.
What's that?
I mean, as early as you can.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, good. But I appreciate it, man. Have a good night.
Have a good night. I'll see you over in locals.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. All right. I'll make this point here, by the way. I told you I'm going to be covering 2 decisions from state Supreme Courts. One of them comes from the great state of Arizona, where they weighed in. The Arizona Supreme Court weighed in with the decision today. That's what I'm going to be doing right now on locals. I'm going to be going over to locals. The description the link is in the description. I'll probably post something on X that I'm going live on locals also before I actually go live. And I'm also going to be sharing with you this really funny video that I cannot share with you on YouTube. I urge you to join me over there. If you cannot afford the $5 a month, hit me up. I'm going to be sending out right now a whole bunch of codes to different people. I see I've got like 10 emails to respond to here. I'm going to be sending those out, and then I'm going to be starting my stream up. I'll also be checking on X if anyone was asking me for a code because they cannot afford it. If you can't afford it, I appreciate if you can pay. But if you cannot afford it, totally ask me. I'm not going to ask you for your social security number or for any hardship stories. I'll be happy to hook you up. And I'll just apologize those of you who I'm sending it out. I'm probably not going to be reading much of your email beyond, can you send me a locals code? So you don't need to really send much more than that, other than saying like, I'd love to join, and I just can't afford it at this time. And I figure, look, eventually, hopefully things will work out better for you and you will be able to afford it. So that's the objective. Anyway, that's goodlogic.locals.com, goodlogic.locals.com. I'm wrapping up over here, so I'm going to do this pretty quick. I'm going to land the plane pretty fast. I'm going to tell you right now, you know the deal. You don't want to be, if you see lab meat, just imagine it's covered in maggots. Don't touch it. It's like there's bacteria, there's all sorts of, ew, gross. It's lab meat. It's lab meat. I mean, it's not, your meat should be coming from a pasture, okay? It should have been part of a creature that at one point had a name, okay? Or at least a number branded into its side, something like that. Otherwise, no, just no. And of course, don't eat the bugs. No bugs. Do not eat the bugs. I'm going to see you over at locals, goodlogic.locals.com. Link is in the description, both Rumble, YouTube, and in the chat. I'll see you there. Take care. Have a good night. And as always, go